Hi guys, today we're going to be working on speech transcription and speaker identification with AI. So if anyone kind of remembers, there was a time where Google worked on a feature on the video recorder where you're kind of able to get more context as to what's happening in the conversation. So when I say more context, you're able to kind of have the labels of the speakers and also timestamps. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be trying to prototype this exact feature on the pixel recorder. Now, how's this process going to work? The first step is going to be transcription, where we're going to convert the raw audio into text. We're going to get text segments. And the next step will be the diarization process, where we segment the audio by speaker turns. And we're going to be doing this based on the timestamps. By combining the text segments from transcription and also speaker labels from diarization, we're able to kind of get who said what. So the transcription is going to give us the content of the conversation, and diarization is going to give us the boundaries of the speakers and the labels of the speakers. So we're able to kind of get who said what by combining these two. So what are the use cases for this? The first use case would be customer service calls, where you want to have more context as to the conversation between a customer service agent and a customer. And another use case would be meeting notes, where you have places like Google Meet, Zoom calls, and you just want to get who's speaking and all that. And the next would be podcasts and interviews, where you have two people kind of just conversing or three people in a podcast. For the tools we're using, we're going to be using the OpenAI Whisper model, which is kind of like an accurate speech-to-text transcription model. The next is going to be Pyannote audio, which is going to help us with speaker diarization and also identification of speaker labels. And finally, we're going to be using Streamlist to kind of prototype our UI. So without further ado, guys, let's get started. All right, so now we're going to import all the data that we need. I'm going to start by importing JSON because we kind of need to process the response from Whisper. So next, I'm also going to be importing request because we need to pull down the audio we're going to be using. And then we will need the temp file because we'll need to write the file to our file system. Then I would need path for that. So from path, okay, I think this should be pathlib. From pathlib, import path. Okay, then we'll need to import the OpenAI package. So you could go from OpenAI, right? Import OpenAI. So that would be kind of like the basic things we're going to be needing. The next thing I'm going to do will be to initialize my OpenAI model. So I'm going to say client will be equals to OpenAI. Then I would need to pass in my API key here. And I could say maybe os.get env, right? And if I go to my env over here, I could see that I have an OpenAI key. I'll say OAI underscore key. Now, since OS is kind of missing, we'll need to kind of import OS. So I'm just going to go here and say import OS, right? And so kind of using an env, I'll also say import dot. Okay, I could say from dot env import node dot env. So I'm going to say node dot env here. Good. So I believe this is going to get our OpenAI key. So next, I'm going to create a function that transcribes. So I'll say def transcribe, right? And this should take in an argument of probably a URL, which is going to be a string, right? And then I'm going to need to write the code that would probably pull my audio from this URL here. So I'll just copy this, and I could say URL equals. Okay, I don't need to kind of set this right now. You know what? Let's just kind of focus on the function, right? So I would say with request dot get, right? And we're going to just specify the URL. And then we'll say string equals true because we're trying to download this. This is literally an audio. And I'm going to set a timeout of probably 30 seconds in case this kind of fails and all. So we request as R, right? I'm going to raise for status R. Raise for status. Okay, perfect. So if everything is good, we're going to need to then write our files. So I would say with temp file, okay, that seems to be a spelling error. So I'll say with temp file dot named temporary file and delete equals to false. So the reason I'm kind of saying delete equals to false would be that once the with block is kind of done, right? It's very possible that the file we're trying to write to our file system is going to be deleted. So I want to keep it. So that's one of the reasons I'll be saying delete is going to be equals to false. Then I would need to specify a suffix. So for us, the suffix is going to be an MP3 file. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'll say as TMP. And with this, we can kind of then start to create our file from chunks. So I'll say from chunk in R dot in r.iter underscore content. R.iter underscore content kind of refers to the audio file we're getting from request or get, right? And I would specify the chunk size, which is going to be 8 kilobytes. Um, I think that should be 8192, right? Yes, 8192. And we need to check that if this is a valid chunk, right? And we'll say tmp dot write chunk, okay? tmp dot write chunk. And then I would also want to specify the tmp path. So tmp underscore path would be path. That will be tmp.image, which is going to be the name of the file. So yeah, that's pretty much everything. We have request or get, we're raising first standards, we're trying to create a file on the file system, and we're writing, sorry, and we're writing the contents of the file to the dir. So the next step will be to kind of get this file and send it to the Whisper module. So let's go and say with okay, this doesn't have to be under this block anymore, right? So we just put it out here since we're done making the request, and this is now in our file system. So I can say with open, I'll take tmp underscore path, right? And I want to write this rb, I want to read this, and as I would say audio underscore file. So we need to kind of have this in such a way that it's more of a variable we can pass as a file to this client over here. So we'll say with open tmp underscore file rb as audio underscore file, I'll say response is equals to, I'm going to refer to this client, which is our OpenAI client. I'll say client dot audio dot transcriptions. I wonder why the enter is not kind of giving us this. I'm kind of assuming this is kind of correct. Okay, dot create. And I think let's just specify the model. So the model we're going to be using is Whisper. So let me say Whisper if you want. And then file, it's going to be our audio file. And then we're going to have the response on some format. So for the response format, it will be text. So if your response format is just pure text, it's going to return text. But if you have a response format of maybe JSON, it's going to return JSON. But for us, we kind of need more detail here. So I'm going to save a verse underscore JSON. So OpenAI kind of allows us to kind of request for this. So, and once you kind of have this, I'll just say raw data is going to be equals to JSON.loads, right? Since we're expecting a JSON, and I'll say response dot JSON. Yeah, that's perfect. So once we have this, I'd say we're pretty much good. The next step would then be to let's try to kind of delete this file that we have here, right? If you look closely, you can kind of see that we're writing the file to the dir, and we're saying we're also saying delete equals to false. So we need to kind of try to account. We need to kind of try to account for this file that's currently on our file system. So the best thing would be to delete it. So I'm just going to say tmp underscore path, right, dot on link, right. Yeah, so that's literally just going to unlink this one part. So I think we'll kind of write this in a try catch block in case this kind of fails. So try, that'll be an except, and maybe we're just going to pass in case anything kind of goes wrong. So, and for us, we'll just kind of return the raw data, raw underscore data, right? So yeah, I think this is pretty much everything that has to do with transcribing an audio. So I'm just going to save this, and I would probably then call the transcribe, right? And URL is going to be the string that we have here, and we're going to paste this here. So let's just kind of have a cross check and see if we're all good. Okay, so I think I could just kind of run this. So I'm just going to click this out, and I would say Python transcribe dot py. So it seems like we're not printing this out. So it's kind of going to be hard to kind of tell that this works. So I'm just going to assign this to a variable as, and I'll call this result. Right, and we could decide to just kind of print the results. So print result. Yeah, with this, I think we're good to go. So I'm just going to save this. I'll Control C and stop the process, and I'll clear and Python. Or yeah, Python transcribe dot py. Okay, so we kind of have our transcription result. So let's just go over here and kind of just extend the response. So we can see okay, the JSON method. Okay, we could just ignore this. So we can see Is this the first time your byte's been impounded? We can see that we kind of have a duration. We have the language. Whisper also kind of lets us know the language. We have the text, which is the conversation. But one of the things I would say that is more interesting would be that if we kind of look closely, we can see that we are able to kind of have segments. So this segment is kind of what we're going to be using to find out the speaker segment. So what that means is that we can get a timestamp. We can see that start 0.0, and we can also tell where the next conversation is starting, which is also here 3.0. And you can also see where another conversation is ending, which is 11.0 over here. So this helps us to have more context into how this data works. So I think we can just kind of decide to take this here, right? I probably should have just written this to JSON or something. So I could just take this here and just say I'll say file dot JSON here. Just gonna paste this here, and I can format the document and put it here. Yeah, so you can see that okay, this is what we kind of have here: duration, ID. Okay, yeah. So you can see ID, language, and basically any simple information that it seems like we might need to get. We can see the text, we can see the start, we can see the seek. Okay, so I think for us, we're going to be making use of the text. We're going to be making use of the start. We're also going to be making use of the end. So now that we kind of have everything that we need, we should be able to kind of improve what we have here to look better. So let's kind of make a tweak to make the transcribe.py more extensible in different cases. So what I'm going to do would be I'm going to try to create a class and make the OpenAI client for transcribing more of a client that can kind of accommodate any other thing. So let's get that done. So I'm going to say class. I would say open. I think I could call this open AI client, right? And here, so just going to indent this guy here, a tab. So the process of having to initialize this, I believe we could take this out here and we could just initialize and say depth in it, right? And text itself. So we could say client and yeah, we'll just say self the client and OpenAI equals to API key OS okay and yeah. So to initialize this, I'm just going to let the user kind of pass in their API key, right? And that will be a string. And this is going to be equals to API underscore key. Yeah, so we don't need this anymore. This could probably be in our main.py. We don't need this anymore. And we don't need import words anymore. So I think we're good. Self.api now. Okay, so this is client. So I think this is also now going to be self.client. And since this is now in a class, this will be taken in self. Also, self URL string. And then, yeah, I think we're all good. I think things are kind of looking good. So to use this, we'll need to then kind of initialize our client to be something like client equals to OpenAI client. The API key is going to be os.getEnv and OpenAI underscore key, right? And this time around, we're just going to say client.transcribe. Yeah, client.transcribe. Yeah, so now I think one of the things we could do is I think we could kind of add some typing here. I mean, if we decide to find a way to kind of store specifically the data that we need, it would make more sense for us, right? So that way we're kind of not working with the JSON overhead. So I'd say we can see that we have what we call more like start, a text, a temperature, and also duration. So let's just all kind of work with that. So we have a duration, right? So let's look at that. A duration, language. We don't need the language. We have the text. So I'm going to just what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to create a data class, right? So I'll say from data classes import data class. Sorry, right? So then we could kind of write a data class that contains our transcription result. All right. So I'll say class transcription result. Yes. And then we have a duration, right? We also have a text. Okay, let's keep track of that. We have a text. We have a language. Let's see what else do we kind of have. We have the text, we have the language. We then have what we call segments, right? So the segment is more of a okay. The segment is more of a list. So that kind of contains several information like ID, AVG prop, compression ratio. Okay, so let's go back and make use of that. So I'm going to say segment, and segment is going to be taken in a list. So I would say from typing, uh, yeah, import list. Yeah, that's great. So for duration, it's going to be a float, right? For the text, it's going to be a string, and for the language, it's going to be a string. For the segment, it's going to be a list, but I think we can kind of improve the transcription segment. So let's just have another data class, right? Just going to put the data class here. We can have another data class that we're going to just say class, and it's going to be a transcription, yeah, segment, right? So for the transcription segment, I want to specify the start, the seek, and this two are just going to be float values. We could also specify this since these are also going to be float values. And we can also specify the text. Yes, so we also should be specifying the end, right? Because if we look over what we have here, we're trying to get the start and also the end of the conversation, which are more like seconds and timestamps. So apart from that, I don't think we need anything else. I don't think we need the ID, or probably we could just decide to keep the ID since it's more than int, right? We need the ID, which is an int, and we don't need the compression ratio. I don't think we need this for anything. We don't need all this. So we will just kind of keep this two, right? So we can then say segment is going to be a list of transcription segment, right? And what else do we kind of have? Sorry. And what else do we kind of have? What else do we kind of have? Let's go to file.json. We can see that we have, if we go here, we have usage, we have words, we have task. So I don't think we need any of this, guys. I don't think we need any of this. So we're just going to keep things simple and keep things this way. So we can then say that transcribe is going to give us what we call a transcription result, right? So if it's kind of expecting a transcription result, we can't return the raw data anymore. We kind of have to find a way to get this raw data to be a transcription result. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be writing contents of raw data here. So I'm just going to go down and raw data here. I would say segments. So we'll need to get the segment. So I could say transcription segment, right? And I think that would be, I think you should actually be taking in the segment information. So since this is an array, I could actually kind of look through the data and getting from the raw data. So I could say we want to have a transcription segment. I want to pass in all the ads, right? Seg, and would say for seg in raw underscore data dot get, and we're going to be getting specifically segments, right? Because we have segments here, right? So from raw dot get, I could say segment, and otherwise I'll just return maybe something empty. So yeah, transcription segment and all that. So I think this is how we can kind of get our transcription segment. And with this, I believe we should be able to get a transcription result, right? So I'm going to be returning a transcription result, right? Transcription result. And first, we'll are looking for duration. So duration is going to be raw underscore data uh, duration. So we're going to have a duration every time. And then we're going to also have text, right? Which is going to be text is going to be equals to raw underscore data text. And then we're also going to have the segments. So segment is going to be equals to segment, right? That we've kind of defined here. Segment. Then language. I don't think we need the language, guys. So I think we could just take this language out. I don't think we need the language. What we would be needing would just be um we may actually kind of need just segments because we're trying to work with speaker labels, so we need more of the segment. So I think this is all we need, guys. So I'm just going to save this, and to be sure everything kind of works, I seem to have removed OS, so I'm just going to say import OS. Right. So let's try things again, and let's say Python transcribe.py. So clear Python transcribe.py. Okay, the API key client option will be set by either passing the API key to the client or by setting the open API key. So I seem to have gotten something wrong. OAI underscore key. Okay. So the reason we're kind of having this will be that I removed .env. So let's just kind of have a separate file called main.py, right? So we're just gonna have to take the logic of everything that has to do with making use of the OpenAI client somewhere else. So let's go over here. We're gonna paste this here, and this time around we're gonna be importing OS. We're gonna say we're also gonna say from .env import load.env, right? Then we'll import the OpenAI client. So we're going to say from transcribe import OpenAI client. So I think this is pretty much good. And I'll also need to call load.env. Yes. And then I can clear this out and call Python main.py. All right. So we can see that we're getting an error that said transcription segment got an unexpected keywords average log perm. So the reason this is kind of happening would be that I'm kind of just passing the entire dict here. So rather than doing that, I'll just kind of specify what I need. So I'm going to say seg, right? Start. Okay, I would need to specify start. So start is going to be equals to this. And I'm also going to need to specify seek. So seek is also going to be equals to seg, seek. Then we also have end. End is going to be equals to seg. And just to kind of verify what else could we be missing, then we have the text. So text is going to be equals to say text. And lastly, I think that should be the ID. And we have say equals to ID. So from what we have here, it seems we seem to be missing something. I wonder what that could be. Okay, Python wasn't closed. So where exactly do I seem to be closing this? Why? For a second, brought it to the so where exactly is the problem? Okay, so the reason we're kind of having an error would be that we're using the reason we're kind of having an error would be that we should be using square brackets, not curly braces. So yes, so let's just kind of change this to curly braces. Sorry, square brackets. Right. Yeah, I guess that's good. So just gonna save this and we will run Python in Py. All right, guys. So we can see that we have the transcription result. We can see the duration. We can see the text. We can also have an idea of when the conversation is ending. We can see the start. We can see the sync. We can see the text. Basically, every single thing that we need is here. So I believe we're good right now. We're really good, guys, and I think we're on track. So now that we kind of have all this working, I'd say the next step would be to kind of build the diarization component. I'm just going to create diarize.py over here. The first thing I will need to do would be to import requests. Now for Pyannote, guys, there's no package. We don't have third-party packages we're going to be using. So for Pyannote, we're going to be making API calls to Pyannote API. So for that, we're going to have a base URL, right? So the base URL is going to be pointing to HTTPS, and that's going to be api.pyannote.ai/version 1. Yes. So then we also need to specify our edits, right? Edits is going to be a dict, and then we could say authorization is going to be F, and it's going to be taking in the bearer, right? And it's going to be taking in our API key. Okay, since I would need to specify the API key, so that'll be os.get env. And if we go to env, you can see that we have this here. So I'm just going to copy the variable name here. I'm just going to paste it here, and we put import os right here, right? And then we could also specify the content type, right? Content type is going to be application. JSON. So that's going to be application. I'm going to have to change this kind of make things more consistent for us. Yeah. So this is pretty much everything that we need. And next, we're going to write our function that's going to let us diarize. So diarize, I'm just going to say def diarize. So this is going to be expecting probably a media URL, which is quite similar to what's here in EMB. So for Pyannote, Pyannote kind of is expecting a URL to your MP3 file or your audio file. So it's kind of expecting a URL from a CDN. So you could upload your S3 file to Cloudinary and S3 bucket, or more like a CDN that kind of makes it accessible for Pyannote. So it's quite different from the OpenAI client where we kind of have to download the media file to our file system. So we're not going to be downloading to our file system because the Pyannote API is expecting a link. So I'm just going to say media URL string. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything we need for this. So now we're going to start by making the request. So I'm just going to create a payload, right? So for Pyannote is going to be expecting a payload called URL, right? And this is going to be taking our media URL. Then it's also going to be expecting a confidence level. You don't need to worry so much about this. So I'm just going to set this to true. And then, okay, this should be a double quotes. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Okay, then, well, this is also going to be expecting number of speakers. So for Pyanode, you're able to kind of pass in the number of speakers. So at any point in time, if you fail to specify the number of speakers, Pyanode is going to try to decide the number of speakers on your behalf. But the more you're kind of able to specify the number of speakers, the more accurate diarization you can get. So it's always kind of advisable to specify the number of speakers. So let's kind of send our payload, right? So to send our payload, I'm just going to say response is going to be equals to request dot post, and this is going to take in base URL, and the base URL is this that we have here, and I'm just going to link this up with base URL plus, let's say plus, that will be forward slash diarize. Yeah, that's good. And our payload is going to be JSON equals payload, and then our headers is going to be equals to the headers we actually kind of defined here. Yeah. So with this, we could just decide to print in the response and response for JSON. And one of the things we can also do would be we can say response, dot race for status. Yeah. That's all good. So does this really work? Let's kind of put that to test. So I'm just gonna say diarize, right? And I'm just gonna pass in the media URL, which is the media URL will kind of have on our EMV. So I'm just gonna take this thing, copy, paste this here, and yeah, Control V. So go back to Bash. So let's actually kind of find out if diarize works. I'll say Python diarize dot py. Okay, so unauthorized for URL 41 client error. So most likely, that will be because our env is not getting found. So I'm going to say from dot env import, right, load, sorry, import load dot env. So I would say load dot env. Okay. Yes. So as we can see, we already got a response that gives us a job ID and a status of created, right? So what does this mean? What it means is that Pyanode is quite different from the Whisper model. Why Whisper is just kind of going to return a result for us, and we're going to have to wait on for a response. We don't wait for a response on Pyanode API. Pyanode API kind of takes our diarization process as a job. So what we need to do will be that for us to kind of get the speaker labels, we need to get the job ID. So we're going to be using the job ID. We're going to be using the job ID to actually pull in the data we want. So I'm going to write an extra function here that says def get underscore job. And it's going to take in what we call a job ID. So I'm going to say job ID will be str Okay. Uh, yeah, just gonna close this because it's quite distracting. So yeah, job ID is going to be equals to this string, and then we're going to make another request. So to kind of save us time, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to copy this. Right, I'm going to copy this. Literally just this two here, and paste this here. Yeah. So just change this. The URL for this would be jobs, right? And this is also going to be expecting some form of payload, but this time the payload we're going to be expecting will be the job ID. But this time it's not going to be as so this is going to be expecting a payload, but for Pyannote, we're not going to be sending a post request this time around. We're just going to be sending a get request. So we're going to say response.get base URL plus jobs, and then we will be passing in the job ID. So what I will do will change this to an F string, right? And put this here, put this over here. Okay, I think on track / jobs, and then we'll specify the job ID. We don't need a payload. I'm going to have to remove this since we don't need a payload anymore. And yeah, so this is pretty much everything we need to actually kind of get a response. So I'm just going to say print response.json. Right. So the next step would be to call get job. So I'm going to pass in the encoded job ID that we have here, and I'll say Control C. Sorry, that would be Control C. Since I use it. So I'm going to comment this out. So now that we have the job ID, we can kind of use this as an opportunity to kind of get the response status that we need, right? So just going to say print response.json, and since we have that, I'm going to say Python. I could literally just backtrack this and call Python diarization.py. Yeah, so this is everything, guys. This is literally everything that we need. So we can see that we have the job ID, we have the speakers, we have when they're speaking, right? We can see the first speaker. We can also see speaker 01. We can see speaker 00. We can also see the start, the end, and we can also see the confidence. So I would just take this over here, right? And copy this. I hope I did that correctly. Let's just enlarge this here. Yes. Wow, the confidence level that I'm seeing here is quite high though. So I'm just gonna take this here, just go up here. Yeah. So we could just say, yeah, we're good. So just go back to part of JSON, and then Control V. And yeah, so what I'm just going to do would be to format the document. And yeah, so this is our context level. But most importantly, the data I need us to pay attention to will be the speaker labels that we have from Pyannote. So if we look below here, we can see that we have the speakers, we have the timestamp they are speaking. So with these timestamps, we can kind of make use of the timestamps from here and the labels from here to actually kind of identify the speakers and what they're saying based on the information we're getting from Whisper. So that's literally how the entire process works. So we need to find a way to sync the data here and also sync the data that we have here. But before we do that, I'm just going to need to fine tune the diarized.py a bit, right? We're going to make it a client just like OpenAI client over here. And I think it's also quite reasonable for us to kind of have a data class of the responses. And that way it's kind of easier to kind of work with the data rather than just having to call or get on JSON and everything pretty much looks messy. So let's get that over with. So I'm just going to refactor, right? So first, we could literally just come out here and say class, right? And we'll call this Pyannote client. And we could take all of this over here and pass it here. So this is the base URL, right? I could just, we could take this. Okay, let's do this way. We're going to say dev, right? Only for a pass. We're going to take this and pass it here. So for this, we're going to be expecting an API key. And then we're going to be expecting maybe a URL. So we could have a default URL to be this, the default URL to be what we have here. So URL is going to be of type string, and it's going to be equals to this. That means we don't need this anymore. And then self.editors is going to be having this. And then we'll say self.base URL is going to be equals to URL. Yeah. So that's what we kind of need to kind of initialize our client. The next step would be to diarize. So I would also need to pass in self, since this is now not a class method. So then we need immediate URL. And what else do we have? We also have the payload, right? And response equals request or get. So we don't need this anymore. I could just say, I could literally make this an string. And I'm going to say self.base URL. Self.base underscore URL. And edits will be self.edits over here. Yeah, I think things are kind of looking good for us. Response raised for status. So this time I'm not going to be printing the response. I'm going to be returning it. Also return response.json, right? So response.json is more like of a date. So it's literally just the job ID and a string, right? So I could, let's do some typing. I would say from typing import date. And I'd also say from data classes import data class. Yeah. So I think we're kind of good with this. So I could just say this is going to return the date, right? Of type, most likely of type str to str. Yeah. Now we're going to also need to modify the job ID, and then I'm going to say self job ID will be a string, and then job ID would most likely be expecting something like a data class. So I'm going to say self.base URL, right? And I'll say self.edits. So then we would be making use of the response that we have to process all the data that we need. So let's kind of take a look at the data we're getting, right? So if we look at file.json, we can see that we have the job ID, we have the status, and we have the diarization array. So I think this is kind of what we need, right? So we are going to be working towards that. Now let's go back to diarize.py. So the first thing we need to create would be the job results. So I would say data class, say class job results, and then I would need to call the job ID. It's going to be a string, and then I'm going to need to call job underscore ID. It's going to be a string, and I would also need to call the status, right, which is also going to be a string. I don't think I need the created at or the updated data is going to here, but I need the output, right? So I'm just going to say output is going to be equals to output is most likely going to be maybe type of option diarization output. So job ID is going to be job ID. All right. So I will also need to import this from type. Sorry, this was a mistake. So yeah, we're good. So for the outputs that we have here, if we look at file.json, we can see that output is more of a, I think it's more of a dictionary, right? So I think I want to call that a dict. Well, it should return an array though. Let's just leave it as what it is. But our major concern would be what's inside here, the data that is basically inside here. So we have the speaker, we have the start, we have the end. So I think what we can do would be to have this a new class that will be called the diarization segment. So I just create a class called, I don't need this anymore. A data class diarization segments. And then I would need to specify the start, which is going to be a float. I would need to specify what else do we have? Okay, the start, the end, and the speaker. I need to specify the end, which is going to be a float. And I would also need to specify the speaker, which is going to be a string. Yeah, so that's pretty much everything we need for a diarization segment. And then I could then probably create a new data class called diarization output, right? So diarization output is going to be class diarization output, right? It's going to be, okay. So it's going to be expecting a list of segments. So I'm just going to say, I could just probably call this maybe segments, or maybe I would just call this diarization to make it so it doesn't quite look similar to what we have on the OpenAI client. So I'll just say a list. So we're expecting a list of diarization segments. So just going to import this. Right. Good. And then we would be expecting what we call a confidence, right? I think there's a confidence from what I'm seeing here. Yes, there's a confidence. So I'm not going to be dwelling so much on the confidence because the confidence is not kind of it's not it we literally do not need confidence. On we literally do not need confidence. So what I'm going to do will be I don't even think I need the diarization output, guys. I could just take this out here and I would just say I could just say, I could really just say diarization. Yeah, I can literally just say diarization equals to the list of diarization segments. Yes. And then I would then just have to work with the response.json to kind of produce what I literally have here. So I could say diarization segment equals to I say segment will be equals to an empty array, right? We don't need the confidence, so I'm not going to be pulling data for the confidence. So I'm just going to say segment is going to be equals to diarization segment, right? And maybe we'll call this seg, just like the previous ones. I would say for seg in response um, output, right? Okay, for seg in response output, just going to go back to file.json, and we'll also need to take this diarization. Yes, yeah, I think this is pretty much what we need. And if yes, if we don't get what we want, we could probably maybe try to return an empty array. But I don't think this is going to give us an empty array. But let's we could just try since it's a bit. So I can just say get diarization. Let's play it safe, guys, and then specify the default array. So that way, I think we're able to kind of get all the segments that we need. Yes, we're able to get all our segments with this. And the next step would then be to return our job results, guys. So we'll say return. That would be job results. So a job result is going to be expecting a job ID, a status. So I would say job ID is going to be equals to response. Let's just go back here. Yeah, job ID is going to be equals to response. Job. I think this should be job ID. And then we also have the segments, which is going to be equals to job result expects what? Okay, it's called this diarization. Diarization, which is going to be equals to segments, right? And status, which is going to be equals to response, status. And yeah, so I think we're pretty much good, guys. I think we're pretty much good. So with everything that we kind of have here right now, we're really kind of good to go, and all we kind of need to do would just be to sync the results of everything we have. So I don't need this anymore. I'm just going to take this out. I don't need this anymore. I also do not need this anymore. Just going to take this out. So yeah, I think this kind of keeps things a little bit cleaner. So I'm just going to take this, just going to Control X and call and save this. So this means we kind of have our Pyannote client over here. Yeah. All right. So we're just going to go to main.py where we're kind of making use of everything. So I will create a client called um, D underscore client, or let's say the rise underscore client. this is going to be equals to Pyannote, the Pyannote client. I was actually kind of expecting the data to kind of suggest something for me, but that's my bad. I'll say from there as import. Good. Yeah. And the next step will be to get the API keys. So I'm just going to copy this, paste this over here, and I would say hi. What's the name of the API key again? Pyannote install key. So just going to save this, get this, paste this over here, and yeah. So we could say the so since we don't need this, we're just gonna try to get the job again to be sure everything kind of works as desired. So I'm going to say diarize underscore client dot get job. So I would save this and go back to bash. So since I don't want to make an API call to OpenAI, I would want to save my credits. I'm just gonna try to run Python main.py with only the diarized code. So I'll say Python main.py. Okay, so we're not necessarily returning the response. Okay, it says response object is not subscriptable. Okay, so that's an error. And I think the reason we're kind of having this will be that we're not kind of getting the response as JSON. So I'm going to say response equals to response. So yeah, I'm going to say response equals to response dot JSON. So I believe this is going to easily fix that. So save, go back to main.py results. It's going to be equals to this, and let's just print our results. I'll save this. I think also going to save this. I main.py. Yes, so let's just run this again and see what that leads us to. Perfect. As you can see, we have the job results, we have the diarization segment, and yeah, this is pretty much everything we need. We just need to find a way to make this job result kind of also work with transcribe.py, and we're pretty much good. Which is where main.py now comes in. So in the main.py, we're going to be addressing everything that has to do with syncing the OpenAI client and the Pyannote client together. So let's kind of make the adjustments that we need to make to main.py. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to be doing will be to ensure the job result that I have here kind of works hand in hand with the transcription result that I have here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to write a function in main.py that kind of labels the speakers, right? So it's going to mark the speaker to a more reasonable label. So I'm just going to write a function called def speaker, right? And it's going to take in a speaker ID, which is a string, and it's going to return a string for us, right? So now this is going to return, okay, this is going to return the first speaker. So we have the first speaker, which is speaker 00, right? And then we also have this speaker, which this speaker we can call first. We can call this person first. Okay, so it seems speaker 01 seems to be the first person speaking from what we have here. So I can call this the second person. And then I will just say speaker 01 is going to be the first. Oops. It's going to be the first person. Yeah. Then we're going to say, okay, this is meant to be curly braces. Okay. All right. So we need to get this based on the key. So I'll say dot get speaker underscore ID. So in a situation where we're kind of unable to get the speaker ID, I'll just return unknown. All right, guys, stay with me. I know this has been a long video, but trust me, guys, we're gonna get to the end of this. We're almost kind of there, so just try to stay with me. So now the next step will be to find the speakers, right? So now I'm gonna say def find underscore speakers, right? So we'll start by getting the start time, and then we'll start by getting the diarization segment, right? So this is going to be a string. Sorry, start time is going to be a float. Diarization segment is going to be an array. So what I'm going to be doing will be this, right? I kind of want to get the speakers right in the conversation. So ideally, I first kind of want to take my transcription segment, my transcription results, right? I first want to get the start time. If you actually kind of take a look at this, we can see that we have the start time. And if we go to diarise.py, right, we can see that we also have the start and the end time. But the start time we're going to need to be working with will be the start time of the transcribed conversation, right? Because we need to kind of start with the text. We need to kind of start with the text segment. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be making comparisons based on the start time to based on the start and end time of the diarization segments. So we literally want to take this here. We can say this is starting at 0.565 seconds, right? And sorry, this is starting at 0. Let's go back again to see what we have. Yeah, this started at 0.565, so 2.925. So this is a bit more detailed as to when it comes to the end. But if we go back to what we have here, we can see that this starts at 3.0. So it's more like Whisper is trying to give us an estimate. So if we're trying to walk towards the end of the conversation, right, we will be working towards we'll be working towards something that is more like 2.9. So that way, it's going to give us more something that is close accurate. So let me kind of write the code for what I'm trying to say. So we're going to say for segments in diarization underscore segments, right? So see if segment dot start, right, less than or equals to the start time, right? So we're literally just trying to say this starts by 0 points. If we compare the values, we can see that the diarization segment kind of returns a value that's kind of closer as to what OpenAI is kind of giving us. So we can see that this is 0.5. This is literally speaker 01. Okay, speaker 01 seems to be the first speaker. So we can see that this is 0.565 and the end is kind of 2.95. So we're trying to check if segment.start less than equals to the start time, right? And if it's also less than equals to segment.end. So what that means is that we want to have a start time that falls between the beginning and the end of this. That way, you're able to kind of tell that the conversation kind of falls in between the range of this. Otherwise, if you have a situation where the start time is not in the middle of this, you're probably in the wrong conversation, right? And that's not supposed to happen. So that's the logic we're trying to work with. So we will then say return segment dot speaker, right? In a situation where we're unable to kind of get this, I think it's best to just return on the right. So if segment dot start less than equals to start time and less than equals to segment dot end, return segment dot speaker. So now let's just kind of work on our code that will just kind of integrate everything all in one. So I'll say def build conversation. So I want to make this like a pixel recorder I kind of showed you guys earlier. So this is going to be expecting a transcription. Okay, let's spell friendly, which is going to return what we call a transcription result, right? And then we want to have diarization. Yes, so the diarization is kind of supposed to return what I would call more like an array, right? So this is supposed to return job results. So I'm just going to import this, and then I think I should also be able to import this. Okay, yeah, from diarize import job results, right? So then we would need to get all the conversations. We want to get all the conversations line by line. So I'm just going to say, I'm just going to create a line or an array of conversations, right? So I'll say for T underscore segment, which is for transcription segment in transcription dot sorry transcription dot segment. Okay, that seems to be spelled wrongly. Yes, transcription dot segment. Right. We want to get the start time. Start time, if you recall, this is what we're just making use of. We're making use of this transcription result. So start time dot segment means we're referring to the transcription segment, so we can do dot start. So if you go back to main.py, we can just say start time will be T on the segment dot start. Right. So to get the text, To get the text, right, that would be t dot segment dot t underscore segment dot text. Now we get the speaker ID, which is going to be speaker underscore ID, right? Which is going to be find speakers, right? So when we can find the speakers, so we're going to pass in the start time, which is going to be the same as the start time that we have here. And next, this is also going to be expecting the diarization segment, so it will be diarization dot diarization. So this is going to be giving us the diarization segment. Yeah. And then we would also need to get the speaker, right? So once we get the speaker, we also need to then pass in what we call, sorry, this is going to be map, sorry, this is going to be speaker, rather. And then we'll probably need to pass in the speaker ID, right? And once we have this, I believe we should be able to have a full speaker. So I'll just say lines.append, right? Line.append, just append an empty string. Sorry. Yes, line.append, we'll just append the speaker, which is what we have here. And then we'll then append the text. So what we're doing is the speaker ID kind of returns the ID of the speaker based on the timestamps and the segments that we have. And once we kind of have the speaker ID, we pass it here to kind of get the proper label, and we then attach the speaker to the text. That's literally everything we're trying to do. And towards the end, we just return lines. Yeah. So we return the entire conversation that's been sent. So once we kind of have that, I think we're pretty much good to go. Now that we kind of have the basic stuff we need to set up, what we're going to do right now will be to set up Streamlit and set up our UI. So this time around, I'm going to be importing Streamlit. I'm going to say import Streamlit, right, as ST. Yeah. So the next step will be we need to start setting up our UI. And the first step to kind of set up our UI will be to st.title, which is going to be the title of our application. So I'm just going to put audio, um, just kind of call this stuff audio stuff, right? So the next step will be we want to have our OpenAI key and we want to have our Pyannote API key. So since this is going to be more like a SaaS product, right? What we're going to do will be that we're going to make this more of like an input field. So that means that we will allow our users to be able to put in their OpenAI key, to put in their Pyannote API key to kind of get this project working. So I'm just going to say OAI underscore key, right? It's going to be also we're going to have okay, this should be OpenAI underscore key, and we're going to also have Pyannote underscore key. So this is going to be equal to st dot. I think we can have this as a sidebar, right? St dot sidebar, right? Okay, that works. Dot. I think we should have a test input also for Streamlit. Just to kind of verify, I believe this is valid. I think so. This is valid too. We just put open AI. Okay, yeah, that works. That works. So we'll call this open AI API key, right? So we're going to take the same thing and just kind of get this ready for Pioneer also. So st dot sidebar is going to be we'll call this Pioneer API key. Yeah. So now that we kind of have that, we're also going to want to specify our audio underscore URL. Okay, we don't need this. We don't need the audio underscore URL, right? Because it's a dashboard. We want the users to be able to put in their URL. If you recall, we kind of had like more like a static URL that we used, but for this interface, we're not going to be working with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a button, right, that kind of runs the entire pipeline. So I'm just going to say if st dot button, right, and we'll call this process audio, right? And we need to check if not OAI underscore key, right? Or not Pioneer underscore key, right? We want to raise an error. That's going to be st dot error for Streamlit, right? Um, please set your API keys, right? Good. And the next step would be to check if this goes through. Else, we don't want to initialize. We'll say with st dot. Okay. I think we could use a loader for this with st dot spinner. right? So once the button is kind of clicked, we want to show a spinner that says processing audio file, right? And in the process of processing the audio file, that's kind of when we then make the API call. So I'm just going to take this all here, right? Okay, let me just keep this way. I'm just going to take this all here, right? So we're going to uncomment the client for OpenAI. So we'll say, um, good. So we're going to say OpenAPI client. It's going to be OpenAPI client. But this time we're not going to be using the ENV. We're going to be using the OAI underscore key that we kind of allow the user to kind of specify, right? We can see OAI underscore client. Uh, this seems to be on red, expected an intent block. So that means that I'm just going to take this, I'm going to tap this out. Yeah. And then I can call this Pyannote underscore client. So we're going to just bring this over here. Right. Okay, that means we're good. So the next step would be to transcribe. So I can say transcription is going to be equals to OAI underscore client dot transcribe. And I think this is most likely going to be our audio URL, right? Let me say audio underscore URL. Just going to have the audio underscore URL here. Actually, we could actually also let the user enter. We're going to let the user enter in the audio URL, but for now, I'm just going to keep this as an empty string, right? Perfect. So audio underscore URL, and yeah, so that's just transcribe. And then we'll probably also want to diarize. But to first diarize, we're going to need to get the job ID. So I'm going to say get underscore job underscore ID. And I'm going to be making use of the Pyannote client for that Pyannote underscore client dot diarize. Dot diarize, which takes in what? The audio URL. And the next step will be to call the get job, right? We're going to say diarization equals to Pyannote dot client dot get underscore job, right? And get underscore job is going to take in a job ID. So I'm going to just pass in the get job ID variable because this is actually kind of expecting a job ID, right? So get job ID kind of returns more like a date. So I'll just need to say dot get, and that will be job ID. Yeah, so I think everything's pretty much looking good and neat, right? Get job underscore ID. Okay, it seems everything is pretty much good to go. So now it seems that we're running the diarization component immediately once you get the job ID. I believe since this is a job, it's going to take a little bit of more time for this to kind of run. So I'm just going to do something here. So I'm just going to say time dot sleep, right? And I'm just going to give this maybe 10 seconds. So I'm just going to import time. Yeah, import time. Yeah, time of the 10 seconds. So what this means is that if we first run Pioneer client.diarize and the job gets sent, we're going to wait 10 seconds um before we try to get the job. Now, do not do this in a production environment because that would be bad. In a production environment, you want to kind of more like have a task, probably with Celery, that's kind of like checking maybe every 30 seconds. You would definitely have a background task. So you would not be blocking your code with time.sleep. So I'm just kind of doing this because it's more of a code example and all that. So yeah. Now, the next thing I'm going to do will be that I'm then going to then get the conversation line, right? So I'll just say conversations is going to be equals to, right, build underscore conversation, right? Since we're going to be running build underscore conversation, I'm going to say transcription. I'm going to pass in the transcription, right? Then I'm going to pass in diarization. That's going to be diarization. Diarization. Okay, yeah, I think that's correct. Okay, it seems like spell. It seems like spell that wrongly. Yeah. So that's kind of how we get the conversation right. So if we recall, the conversation is more of an array, right? So we need to find a way to kind of render this. So I'll just say um, st.text dash string.text. Yeah, we're just going to say st.text, and I could probably put in maybe a new line after each. Okay, this is wrong. Yeah, good. A new line after this, and I would say dot join, and that should take in conversations. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything, guys. Okay, expected and expression. Oh, sorry about this, guys. So this should be dot join. Yeah, so this is literally going to pass all our conversation into a line of text that we can basically have access to. So, and once you kind of have conversation lines, I believe we can just, once you kind of have this run, the conversation, right? I believe we can just more like drop a success and say st.success, right? Then we say audio, audio processed. Now that we kind of process the audio, I think, yeah, I think we're pretty much good to go, guys, right? Okay, just kind of doing a simple check. What if we kind of let's also kind of allow the users to kind of enter in the audio URL, right? So we're just going to say S control. I'm just going to copy this again. Oops. I'm going to say audio underscore URL. No, we just keep this as a small audio underscore URL, and I'd say right audio URL. Yeah, so that way we're kind of entering everything, our OpenAI keys. Sorry, yeah, that way we're kind of entering everything, our audio URL, our OpenAI keys, our Pyannote API keys, and everything. Yes. So since we're good to go, we're just going to need to start the server with Streamlit, right? But just to check, right? Yeah, I think this is it. So in a production environment, you might want to still kind of have some error checks, some exception handling in case there's no result and all that. But because of time, I'm just going to want to round up this video real quick. So I would want to start my Streamlit application. So just going to clear this out. So I'll say Streamlit run main.py. Sorry. So I'm just going to say Streamlit run main.py. Okay, so it said the Streamlit command is not found. So that means we probably have not installed Streamlit. I'm just going to install Streamlit quickly. Okay, now that Streamlit, all right, now that Streamlit has been installed, I'm just going to run this again. And okay, it's okay. I seem to be writing Steam. So Streamlit was already installed. So yeah, that was built from the guys. Yeah, so all right. So since Streamlit is up, we can see that Streamlit is trying to open a new URL for us. Yeah, so it's literally kind of loading our application. So let's see what Streamlit kind of has for us right now. All right. So everything we have is kind of ready. So I'm just going to go back to VS Code here. I'll copy our API keys that we have here. I'm going to copy this. Just going to paste it here. Okay, that's the OpenAI key. I'm going to get the Pyannote API key also, which is literally this. Remember, guys, you have to use your key. By the time you will be watching these videos, these keys will all be invalid. So you have to use your key. So I'm just going to play this and I'll click on process audio. So pressing the process audio is just going to process the audio file, and then we will be expecting a response from Streamlit. So let's see where that takes us. All right, guys, we seem to have gotten an open AI authentication error. It said incorrect API key provided. So we might just need to check this and copy this again, right? So it seems my API key seems to be starting with the wrong key. So I'm just going to paste this. And yeah, so I think we have the correct key now. So I'm just going to process the audio one more time. Okay, guys. So we seem to have an error that says local variable speaker reference before assignment. So we can see where's that line 28 build conversation. So we're going to try to fix that. And let's see what that's saying. Okay. Oh, I see. I think okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say map underscore speaker. I'm going to say map underscore speaker and just going to save this. So I'm just going to click on process audio one more time. Yes. So we seem to have gotten every single thing that we needed. We can see that really there was not a place to park. Every slot in the rack was already taken. in is this the first time your bike's been impounded? We can see we kind of got everything, but for some reasons, we seem to be having everything here as unknown. So, what could be happening or what could be going wrong? Let's try to debug that and just kind of find out quickly. Okay, guys. So it seems the reason we're kind of having this error will be that the map speaker function is kind of spelled wrongly. So I'm just gonna change this to the right spelling, right? And okay, yeah, that's correct. So I'm just gonna save this and process audio. All right, guys, we seem to have gotten our response, but we only have for the second person. So I'm just going to still try to cross check if this is kind of correct. So we seem to be having, I'm just going to go to file.json. And this is speaker underscore 01. All right, guys. So I'm just going to stop the server real quick. So since we're not getting we're not kind of getting the results that we need, we're just going to modify the find speakers a bit. So what we're going to do will be that we're going to just say first, we'll say if not diarization underscore segment, right? If we have no segment, we want to return unknown, right? But what we're going to do this time around will be that rather than having to compare the start time and the end time, right? We're just going to work with the start time. We're going to just find the the start time that kind of works with the bound of the diarization. So if 0.0 works with 0.5, we just want to find the minimum and pick that specific segment, right? So to do that, I'm just going to say return. I'm going to use the minimum. So I'm trying to find the mean. I'm going to say segment, right? Passing the diarization segment, right? And I'm going to pass in the key. I'm going to be using the lambda function here. Say lambda and segment. Sorry. Yeah. And then, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using the absolute value here, right? Start dot time minus segment dot start, and then we're just going to get the speaker. All right, guys. So what we're trying to do is that if the transcription starts a bit outside the diarization bounds, we will still kind of have a value. So that's one of the reasons now that we're kind of working with the start time. But I think I kind of made a mistake here. This should be a subtraction. Yes. So that's what we're going to be doing. So we're literally just changing the approach that we're going with. So I'm just going to save, right? And I'm going to run stream it again. All right. So just going to paste, get my data here. I'm just going to get this here. I'm also going to get this and paste this here. And okay, that's my Pyannote key. I'm going to paste this here. Okay, it seems I can actually kind of prefill my API key. So I'm just going to process audio and wait for a response. All right, guys. So we can see that we kind of have the full conversation now, first person, second person. But to kind of be sure that this works, I'm just going to go back here to my file.json. Okay, yeah, we can see this is kind of similar because we can see that we have the first three speakers to be the first person and the next person subsequently speaking. So we can see that's what we kind of have here, which is literally the same thing. And if you kind of notice, we have the text in the conversation with accompanying here. And the only reason why we kind of have the text is because we're kind of comparing the timestamps with the text segments that are here, and that's how we're able to get that. So the reason why we're able to kind of achieve this is because we're combining the transcription power of the Whisper model and also the diarization of Pyannote. So I believe we've been able to achieve the feature of the pixel recorder. Yes, we kind of had some bumps along the way, but I hope it's pretty much clear. So I know that we kind of went through this tutorial without us having to hear the audio. So I'm just going to play the audio for everyone to kind of listen.
Really, there was no other place to park. Every slot in the rack was already taken. Is this the first time your bike's been impounded? Second. But I don't think they start charging till the third offense. But going to reclaim your bike is such a hassle. Hey, what the heck? Let's have some Mexican food while we're in the area. And then maybe go on a riverside walk.
Most times when you're trying to work with speech transcription and speech diarization, one of the things we didn't do before working on this is we did not process the audio. So most times you might need to kind of have a plugin or a process that kind of cleans the audio for things like lags, few seconds of delay, just to kind of have something that's more accurate. But that's pretty much everything, guys. Thanks for joining me. Cheers.